So, Mr. Nolan, I want to thank you for being here, and if you would like to introduce your team, and I am happy to ask you the standard questions, or you can launch into your presentation.
All right. I'm Gene Nolan, Deputy Director of Finance, and I'm here representing Finance Director Talia Lomax O'Neill, who is out of town. She has a daughter graduating from college and was on the calendar for a long time, so she decided we could handle this. And y'all probably know Stan Romine, who is the budget officer for the Finance Department, and Donna Foster, who is our budget analyst. So Stan's up here to help me with details about the budget per se, and Donna's here if we really get into detail and technical aspects. We're going to send the tough stuff to her. The Finance Department was recommended funding for 4 new budget requests, and we also had a transfer. To start off, we had a transfer of $50,000 from the Human Resources Department to the Finance Department, and that was essentially to take the Diversity Advisory Committee and the Chief Diversity Officer and combined them together. Michelle Lane was named Chief Diversity Officer. She's a Metro Finance employee who has been involved in diversity for procurements and the Business Assistance Office. And it just made sense to move this $50,000 appropriation into the Finance Department to help support her efforts in diversity development. The new request included an $8,000 appropriation for a LoopNet service, which is a commercial real estate listing site online. The big advantage there is twofold. One, it gives us a place or an opportunity to list metro properties that we're trying to dispose of and get a lot of publicity or notice about that. And then it gives us an opportunity when public property is looking for properties for a new facility, a new fire hall, and so forth, to have that as a resource. And that was an $8,000 improvement. Also, we received funding of $125,000 for a payment card industry compliance. This is to contract with an outside vendor to come in and assess the Treasury Department's payment card security appropriateness, and what that will result is we can then act on any issues that are found and improve our security for over 350 credit card or payment card processes during the year. And so it helps the taxpayer in terms of knowing that we have met our requirements from a vendor side to meet these standards that the credit card industry has to meet. We also got an additional FTE this year for the Treasury Department, and that money is to go to fund a position in the short-term rental program. When we started that whole process, we were doing the collections for hotel motel taxes, but this threw a whole new segment into the mix. It also earmarked some of that money for the Barnes Fund. And we added no new personnel at the time that was started, but given the development as it has become known that these folks do owe hotel motel taxes on their businesses, it gives us a position to help with collections. It also gives us a position to match up permits with tax payment. And we've already done one round of that. and the increase has been substantial in the number of people who are now making payments, and we're working with the codes department to match that up with permits. So we feel like it's time to go ahead and get somebody on board to help with that effort. And the final item I was going to discuss, and it's the biggie, so it makes it look like our funded requests were quite substantial, which they are, but it's $1 million to fund PIP and programs. The money is in the finance department at this point, but it's going to be used to fund the PIP programs that were approved. We had 36 PIPs that were submitted this year, and 14 of those were funded, and 7 of them will receive part of this $1 million. The remaining $1 million, what's remaining after we fund those 7 PIPs, are funds that will be used by the departments to continue the whole PIP process during the fiscal year, and to keep innovation and as a topic all year round instead of just a one cycle process. And I think that covers all of our requested improvements and how we feel that will help Metro and the citizens and taxpayers of Davidson County, and I'm available for, or we're all available for any questions.
Councilmember Pridemore, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate the recognition. Also, Mr. Nolan, I'm doing this, so don't kill the messenger, at the request of Councilman Anthony Davis, who couldn't be here, but apparently he had some a constituent that wanted to have some information, and I will tell him it's in the book, but since he's not here, I can't tell him that. The first one is how much, we're looking at the MTA budget, how much of the total transportation budget is funded through the state share gas tax and license fee revenue? I think we discussed that earlier.
Yeah, and actually we've had, and it may be this constituent has been contacting us about various funding sources for transportation. And so basically what I did is just kind of put together a summary, and that basically if you took, we tried to identify what was total transportation cost. And we included in that the subsidy for the Regional Transportation Authority, the commuter rail subsidy, and the subsidy from MTA, along with Public Works roadway improvement and maintenance expenses. And the total of that, and we're talking about just operating budget appropriations for this current year budget, is just over $70 million. Of that $70 million, 51 million of it is funded from either state gasoline tax funds or other dedicated local sources for roads and transportation. And that includes the commercial vehicle wheel tax, the motor vehicle license, the gas and for city and county, and all of that together, the vehicle emission test fees comes up to 51 million that we consider allocated or supporting transportation direction. So the difference of about 20 million is other local revenue sources.
Okay, I think that answers this question. Councilman Davis, thanks you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Mendez.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My question is about the million for the PIPs. I see on page D15.3 where the million is listed. Yes. I was trying to figure out where I could see it in the detailed, the next couple pages.
The $1 million.
Yeah.
the $1 million is just that one line item for PIP. That money will then be transferred out if you know, I don't know if you've seen the ordinance, but in the ordinance, it basically authorizes the Director of Finance to transfer that money to other departments to fund their PIPs. And so it's just a single line item in the Finance Department to be used. And I think attached, or there was sent out, the PIP award summary. And listed in there, you will see the departments that had PIPs and whether it was funded as an appropriation to the department or through this, what we call the Innovative Investment Fund, which is at $1 million, or some other source. Some of them are funded from 4% or capital funding.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm having a hard time tracking some other numbers, so bear with me here. On D15-1, if I look at the last year total expenditures and the this year total expenditures, it goes up by just over $1 million from 9 million and change to 10 million and change, right?
Yes.
And that makes sense to me with D15-3, because it shows the total going up about $1 million with the changes.
Correct.
And so then when I look at the 15-4 and 5, the total for the two of them on -4 is 9.2 million and 911,000 on -5. See what I'm talking about?
The 911, yeah, the 9,264,000.
So those come up to about 10.1. So it feels like the million should be in there still.
All right, so you're saying where is the million on those two pages?
Right.
Do you know?
Okay. So,
Only because that was the object account used when they,
so when finance sends out that $1 million, it'll be through the internal service fee?
no, that was just the object account used when they set this, when they put this in finance's budget. So it's not actually an internal service fee.
Okay.
It's just,
Seems like maybe that should be pulled out for the presentation. Just because, you know what I mean? It just, the $1 million for the PIP is loaded into the internal service fee on the detailed GSD general fund budget. And that I think is, well, I mean, I understand why it happened, but I think it's makes it not clear for anybody who wants to try to track how that's working.
Well, I think essentially they were just looking for a placeholder to contain the $1 million, and it would be transferred out later. What we can do is provide, as those transfers are made, where obviously it's coming from that $1 million, and then which departments it goes to.
It would make sense to me, I mean, thank you. It would make sense to me in the budget presentation if that just got footnoted on this page to let people know that 1.3 million in internal service fee really includes the $1 million for the PIP also. That's the only question I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I had a question about the short-term rental person. I've been somewhat involved in this, and I get an email a day now from services that are doing short-term rental enforcement software something or other, and didn't know y'all may not be getting those. So just to make y'all aware that may be an option that maybe in the long run could serve the same function as in terms of connecting people with short-term permits who may not be paying taxes, that might be a better value for that. So I'm happy to begin to forward those to y'all.
If you could share that, would be great. We're obviously progressing or developing as we get into
It's a
this.
learning process.
And there are things that you pick up on in terms of how to do this, and looking at some sort of contractual arrangement or somebody that already has software to do it would be something we would look at.
Great, I'll pass those on.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm glad y'all are capturing that, though. That's really important to
Yeah.
do.
We're making a pretty good headway on it now.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Gilmore.
Thank you. It's a finance question, but it's not directly with the department, so I don't know if Rich would be able to answer it. And we actually had discussed it the other day with the increase that we did for all the Metro employees. My aunt is retired, and she wanted to know did she get an increase or not. And we had discussed this, and she's not going to leave me alone. She thinks I have more power than I do. I need to let her know, did they get an increase or not?
So this is, for the record, not a personal question. It is one for all of those represented by her aunt.
That's right, that are retired and have worked 30 or 40 years at Metro.
You're turned on.
So I asked this question because several council members had asked about pensioners. And so as they relate to me, is increases for pensioners are not part of the pay plan established by the Civil Service Commission, but rather are based upon a formula set under the Metro Code, depending on which pension plan you're in. The amount of the adjustment is determined annually by Metro's independent actuaries based upon a formula tied to changes in the Consumer Price Index. And so the adjustments became effective January 1, and it doesn't say which, it was a 1%, it doesn't say that. I think it's a 1% increase for some of the pensioners, but not for all, depending on which plan you're in. Let me find that. I'll get right back to you. I'm sorry.
Your microphone is on.
Okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate you indulging me. So my question was, just for the viewing audience, this is very helpful. Which plan would they know? Because it's my understanding there's several different plans, so how do they know to identify each plan that they're under? Yeah.
They could call HR
Okay.
and ask to speak to the benefits people there. That would be one way. I think a number of retirees probably do know which plan they're under. But if there's specific questions, the easiest answer is to either email or call HR because they could find out the quickest.
Okay, thank you so much. And my auntie said to tell her, the mayor she loves her. She thanks for thinking of the retirees in the city.
Councilmember Angie Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My question is also about the short-term rental position. Can you share with us how much in hotel motel tax has been collected from STRPs? And is that collection and those permits funding this position effectively?
Effectively.
Effectively. Do you know how much that collection amount is?
Let me just give you some number on accounts first. In February of 2015, we had 238 accounts. February 16, we had 771. April of 2016, we had 1,051. And in May of 2016, 1,138. I think, as y'all remember, when we first started this, we were saying probably $50,000. By November of 15, we're up to 150,000, and April of 16, we're north of $300,000.
Okay, so that's in total, but if we were to, I guess, annualize it at our current number of accounts, what would you anticipate the annual collection amount? I mean, you're saying over the history of, as we've grown, but if you just kind of take now at the number of accounts that you have and say for the next year.
I know we're doing something like, I think, 77 new permits a month. And I'll have to, I can get an annualized number for you and provide that to you.
Great, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Madam Vice Chair, may I ask a second question or wait until? Okay, my
Go right
second
ahead.
question is regarding the payment card industry compliance assessment. Is that a one-time assessment or analysis?
Yes.
And is that something that you've done before or you anticipate doing again? And how often do you do that?
Well, I don't know when the last time was that we did it. This is a one-time, and we'll go through a period of time of 2 to 3 years, or is it longer than that? Probably 2 to 3 years, and then do another assessment in order just to make sure we're keeping up with the new standards as they come out. How long ago did we do one?
We've never completed this assessment before. There's a long questionnaire that goes along with the assessment. Most of it is ITS related, so to go around the security of the system that transmits the data. We have used that to build our system, but we've never had the actual look at what we've done to make sure it works. So that's what this is for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Hager.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nolan, for being here. Just a real quick question. On this public investment plan, it's understanding this is something y'all didn't have last year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And who's going to be the gatekeeper of this, and what's the criteria for the issuance of the funds?
Well, I think essentially the finance director is going to be the gatekeeper of it. Obviously, for the 7 plans that were approved already, they'll get the money through that. The rest of it will be based on, for example, where a department came and made a PIP presentation, and they didn't get funded in this year's budget, but the committee felt like they had good thoughts, a good plan. It just needed to be fleshed out. They would be eligible to get some of this money.
And will this be a reoccurring expense every year now, or do we know?
I suspect it'll be reoccurring. Now, I don't know at what amount it will be, but the whole objective is to kind of keep this thing self-generating in terms of looking for innovative ways to solve identified problems.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Councilman Hager. And Councilman Withers.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I would like to ask an additional follow-up with regard to the short-term rentals. I'm pleased to hear that we are making great strides in increasing the number of accounts that we have so that we can collect the taxes that are owed for those. There are certainly a large number in Nashville, and I think even though that's a big number, I think that there are probably a lot more out there than we have permits just yet. So my question is, as I'm hearing that you are working with codes, but just wanted to know if you can help me understand who is responsible in Metro government for conducting any kind of surveillance to help identify short-term rental operators who may not yet be actually permitted. And then similarly, who is responsible for ensuring that that applicable fees or fines are collected for those who are in violation?
Good question, and I'm not sure I have a very good answer. I think to a large extent right now, we're dependent on neighbors or people that know of it and know that, or have been there and hadn't been charged, or know and see the activity. This is where Council Lady Allen's enforcement type would come into play. In addition, I'm not sure once we even know that, other than sending out a compliance demand letter, that there is any other enforcement or surveillance. As far as I know, Tom Edelman's the treasurer and handles or manages the collection division for that. As far as I know, Codes doesn't have any surveillance.
Codes is doing it on a as they know basis, and the same with finance. Once we find out about them, we will notify them that they need to come in. And we help them calculate the penalty and interest and keep that on the records as long as they have the accounts open. So, and most of them are coming in and paying. The $300,000 number that Gene mentioned a few minutes ago was strictly for the last month. So that was based on the new filings and people getting caught up for the last year that they've been doing the permitting and collecting the fees. So. But actually the legislation didn't put any enforcement tools in the legislation. So basically we're dealing with it on a case-by-case basis and sending out letters when we have the time to build the database to know who to send the letters to.
Thank you, Council Member. Seeing no one else in the queue, thank you, Mr. Nolan and team.
Thank
And
you.